These stars weren't just actors. They were unwilling subjects in secret government mind control experiments, programmed to influence public opinion and spread propaganda, and some of them never recovered their original personalities. Judy Garland, the Wizard's Daughter, and the Purgative Protocol. And the first subject on the table was the girl who needed magic, Judy Garland. Our journey begins with the little girl who walked the yellow brick road, yet found herself trapped in a labyrinth of studio and state control. For American audiences, Judy Garland embodied innocent, all-American talent, a luminous symbol of hope and youthful energy. What the public did not know was the brutal, calculated regimen designed to maintain this image, which was the perfect, cruel cover for a government influence program. Born Frances Ethel Gumm in 1922, Judy was placed on a punishing schedule from her earliest days at Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. The studio provided her and other young stars with a constant supply of stimulants to keep her working and sleeping pills to force rest. This forced dependence, established before her teenage years were over, was not accidental. It was the perfect lever of control. Records emerging decades later suggest that certain powerful interests saw in Judy not merely a star, but a national asset. Her unique ability to evoke profound emotion in the American public made her influence in wartime, and later in the Cold War era, immense. The state understood that a star who could make the nation weep on command held profound cultural power, a tool too valuable to be lost to maturity or personal autonomy. This intense focus meant she was never allowed the natural development of an adult. This constant medical intervention was seen as a way to maintain her public fragility, the illusion of the vulnerable but happy performer who desperately needed guidance. She lived in constant, quiet terror that she would fail to meet the emotional demands placed upon her, a fear allegedly reinforced by her handlers to ensure compliance. The unrelenting harsh schedule, coupled with the chemical dependency, created a profound psychological rift. It is whispered among historians that certain high-level government programs, focused on influence and suggestion, found an ideal testing ground in the isolated world of the studio system. Judy was subjected to what her biographers referred to as sleep therapy sessions, ostensibly for her emotional instability, but which involved long periods under medication. Some believe these sessions were used for deliberate programming, reinforcing the narrative of the tragic, fragile waif who needed the control of the studio and, by extension, the state. Her lifelong inability to form lasting, secure relationships and her persistent reliance on external support were not just the result of a difficult childhood. They were the scars of a mind deliberately fragmented for easier management. She was constantly exhausted, constantly performing, and constantly medicated, never allowing the stable foundation necessary for an authentic adult life. The tragedy is that her genuine, raw talent always fought back, creating the electrifying, heartbreaking performances that still resonate today. This authenticity was, ironically, the fracture in the meticulously constructed persona, a human cry escaping the programmed shell. The little girl who dreamed of going over the rainbow spent her life searching for a home she was programmed to never find. She passed away after an accidental substance overdose at the age of 47 in 1969. Her genuine sorrow remains a poignant reminder of the tragic cost of her fame. Marilyn Monroe, the Lost Star, and the Handler's Contract. But the most high-profile target of these shadowy programs may have been a woman whose very persona seemed tailor-made for national influence. Marilyn Monroe, the ultimate platinum blonde bombshell, was an invention, a beautiful vacuum ready to be filled with the desires of the masses and, perhaps, the directives of the powerful. Her journey began as Norma Jean Mortensen, a foster child with a fragmented, traumatic history, the ideal candidate for psychological restructuring. By the mid-1950s, Monroe was not just an actress, she was a geopolitical phenomenon. Her image was projected globally, a symbol of American freedom and physical allure. But her fame brought her into direct contact with the highest echelons of power, including alleged liaisons with the Kennedy brothers. Her isolation wasn't just paranoia. It was rooted in the existence of mysterious white envelope files she allegedly kept detailing her highly sensitive conversations with political figures. The internal conflict of being an innocent icon and a politically aware operative tore her apart, It is here that speculation about her manipulation turns darkest. The isolation of her final homes and the strange timing of key phone calls further fueled the idea that she was monitored, a valuable but unstable asset. Some researchers suggest that these files contained specific pieces of political and military information she was unknowingly tasked with gathering or retaining, functioning as an unwitting courier or information repository. This double life required her to maintain a constant state of deception, even with herself. The sophisticated psychological profiles compiled by the studios, and later allegedly shared with government agencies, pinpointed her deep-seated fear of abandonment. This fear, some believe, was ruthlessly exploited, convincing her that her fame and security depended entirely on serving the demands of her most powerful associates. She was forced to navigate the treacherous territory between the innocent icon and the politically aware operative, a cognitive dissonance that tore her apart. Her sudden, intense commitment to entertaining troops overseas, while publicly lauded as patriotism, is sometimes viewed as part of her assignment, a carefully manufactured role to bolster military morale and spread propaganda. The immense pressure of maintaining this double life, the naive, physically attractive symbol, who was also a political pawn, ultimately led to her emotional and mental deterioration. Her isolation grew absolute because she was unable to trust anyone, fearing that every intimate relationship was just another layer of the control mechanism. The crushing weight of having to perform innocence while holding sensitive state secrets became her final, intolerable burden. The only security she ever knew was the constant, stifling presence of those who claimed to manage her, leaving her utterly alone at the center of the world's attention. Her passing, after an accidental substance overdose, in August of 1962, at the age of 36, remains one of the most debated and heavily sealed secrets in modern history, ensuring that the true nature of her political entanglements would never be fully revealed. James Dean, The Fast Life and the Forgotten Blueprint. If Monroe was controlled by desire, James Dean was controlled by the future's chaos. Dean became the instant, definitive icon of alienated youth, the controlled symbol of dissatisfaction for a generation raised in the comfort of the 1950s. The narrative surrounding Dean, the one of the actors who achieved too much too soon, masks a curious aspect of his brief career: his sudden, intense focus on high-speed driving and existential philosophy, appearing almost programmed. Before his breakout, Dean had served in the military reserve and possessed a surprising depth of knowledge concerning military strategy and technology for a young actor. Some theories suggest that the manufactured rebellion he embodied was not just a calculated studio image, but a secret government project on youth influence designed to channel post-war youthful restlessness into a marketable, controllable aesthetic. His dramatic shifts in personality, from introspective artist to reckless speed enthusiast, puzzled even his closest friends. This recklessness was allegedly cultivated to make him a more potent, disruptive figure. His speed obsession was tragically calculated, a psychological release valve designed to focus his internal chaos into a controllable, public form of daring. He had developed a sudden, almost obsessive interest in certain complex philosophical and engineering topics just months before his passing. These intense, almost jarring pivots in his personal focus were interpreted by some as psychological triggers designed to influence the vast, young audience that mimicked his every move. His fame was used as a massive social experiment. The tragedy of his swift demise, in a high-speed accident on September 30th, 1955, was devastatingly effective for his brand. His young life was cut short, but his image remained perfectly preserved, frozen forever, as the controlled archetype of youth angst. In a chilling interpretation, his early passing sealed the secret, serving as a clean project shut down. The controlled demolition of his image allowed the government to control the narrative of youth rebellion, making his passing a more potent, permanent cultural statement than his unpredictable life. The Little Bastard, the nickname for his ill-fated Porsche 550 Spider, became an object of legend and fear. After the accident, the wreckage itself was purchased by George Barris and subsequently used in bizarre, often terrifying exhibits, where it was rumored to bring misfortune to those who came into contact with it. The car's final disappearance, while being transported in 1960, makes the entire narrative of Dean's short life feel less like an accident and more like the controlled demolition of a complex experiment, leaving behind nothing but the myth. Frank Sinatra, The Rat Pack, The Code, and The Desert Network. The program didn't stop with the stage. It extended to the entire Rat Pack Network. Frank Sinatra, the voice, was more than a singer. He was a cultural force, a magnet for political power, organized crime figures, and millions of adoring fans. His control over public sentiment and his extensive network of contacts made him, according to some highly controversial documents, an asset of immense interest to intelligence agencies. During the Cold War, a celebrity with Sinatra's access and global reach was considered an unparalleled tool for influence. Allegations suggest that the FBI and CIA actively recruited him, leveraging his powerful connections in Las Vegas, Washington, D.C., and Hollywood. The legendary Rat Pack, the glamorous clique he led, could be seen as an informal information network, with the Las Vegas casinos serving as discreet hubs where the secrets of the powerful were exchanged. Sinatra's involvement added a layer of undeniable danger to the glamour. Some accounts detail his alleged use of specific code words or phrases subtly woven into his stage patter during performances, brief, controlled messages broadcast to key listeners in the audience or via recordings. His ability to mobilize support, particularly for the Kennedy campaign, highlights his political utility. The Desert Network represented a highly sophisticated nexus of communication, where covert operations were shielded by the brilliance of the nightlife. The constant surveillance he underwent, well documented by the FBI, was not solely punitive. It was, perhaps, the necessary cost of utilizing such a powerful yet volatile agent. The burden of constant awareness, knowing he was simultaneously tracked by intelligence services, organized crime leaders, and studio fixers, created a suffocating pressure few could endure. He was constantly performing, even off stage, forced to maintain the facade of reckless abandon to conceal the meticulous precision of his covert work. His complexity, his contradictions, his very magnetism made him the perfect cover, allowing him to operate in the open, protected by his own larger-than-life persona. The human cost of this double life was evident in Sinatra's obsessive secrecy and sudden, explosive temper. He became fiercely protective of his private life and his associations, driven by an intense paranoia that was often dismissed as artistic temperament. In reality, he lived with the lifelong fear of exposure that the complex web of loyalties he wove would finally unravel and ruin him. He maintained his enigmatic public image until his passing in 1998. Dorothy Dandridge, the Barrier Breaker and the Black Box. Sinatra's value was his access, but for others, the goal of control was purely limitation, a tragic attempt to suppress how far a boundary-breaking icon could ascend. Dorothy Dandridge was a pioneer, the first African-American woman nominated for a Best Actress Oscar for Carmen Jones in 1954. Her beauty, talent, and sheer charisma should have guaranteed her limitless success. Yet her career was systematically stifled. Some theories posit that this stifling was not merely institutional prejudice, though that was certainly a driving force, but a deliberate, calculated form of control. Dandridge represented a threat to the established racial and cultural order that the government wished to maintain during a period of civil unrest. Intelligence agencies allegedly compiled sophisticated psychological profiles on her, not to elevate her, but to pinpoint her vulnerabilities and enforce control. The goal, some argue, was to keep her success within a tightly controlled, safe box, limiting her to specific roles that would not challenge the status quo, effectively controlling her narrative. The immense pressure she faced to stay in line, coupled with the financial ruin she suffered due to exploitative managers, made her incredibly vulnerable to manipulation. The systematic denial of lead roles was a form of professional torture, denying her talent the breathing room it needed. The psychological damage caused by being treated as a limited symbol rather than an unlimited talent was immense, leading to intense personal struggles. Her financial and personal problems were, in this tragic interpretation, used as leverage, a constant reminder that her career and security depended on compliance. The human cost was agonizing. Despite her immense fame, Dandridge was isolated, barred from most hotels and restaurants, and denied roles that would allow her to compete with her Caucasian contemporaries. The psychological damage of having her professional destiny constantly denied, purely to maintain a social order, was devastating. She became a symbol of struggle, her pain and frustration ultimately leading to her passing, alone in her apartment in 1965. Her early passing, at the age of 42, was the final, devastating act of a system that refused to let a powerful, boundary-breaking icon determine her own destiny. Her struggle remains a poignant exposure of the system's cruelty. It is this hidden truth that Golden Age Files is dedicated to uncovering. If you find these forgotten narratives of Golden Age Hollywood as compelling as we do, please consider subscribing to Golden Age Files. It helps us dedicate the resources needed to continue our deep research and bring these profound human dramas to light. Marlon Brando, The Method Man and the Maverick Interventions. The rebellion, when it came, was often mistaken for mere acting, but some believe it was the final, desperate struggle against institutional control. Marlon Brando redefined American acting, bringing a raw, volatile intensity to the screen that was previously unseen. This volatility, however, was not always a sign of genius. Some suggest it was symptomatic of a deep psychological resistance to control. Brando, like Dean, was an immensely powerful cultural voice, and his early, politically charged activism was an immense concern to certain powerful organizations. According to speculative accounts, Brando's dramatic mood swings and public outbursts were seen by his alleged manipulators as a failed program, a complete breakdown of the conditioning meant to create a controllable, handsome Hollywood star. His very embrace of the method school of acting, with its emphasis on authentic emotional recall, may have been initially manipulated to make his performances more powerful before his own internal self broke free. He was allegedly forced into specific, lengthy psychological evaluation sessions that were cleverly disguised as intensive acting workshops for the method school. The purpose, in this cynical view, was not to improve his craft, but to manage or even attempt to reset his fragmented personality. The long, costly battle to reclaim his artistic freedom resulted in significant periods of blacklisting and professional difficulty, always dismissed as the natural consequence of his difficult reputation. His personal life often became collateral damage in this war against control, fueling the myth of the unmanageable genius. Brando's political and personal life became increasingly erratic, marked by public eccentricity and deeply troubled family dynamics. His erratic behavior was often dismissed as the indulgent excess of a spoiled genius, which conveniently provided cover for his alleged struggle for autonomy. Attempts to bring him back into line came through both professional and legal pressures, but he refused to yield. The tragedy is that while Brando did manage to resist complete control by making himself deliberately unmarketable and difficult to manage, such as his famous refusal of the Academy Award for The Godfather, the damage was permanent. His later life was characterized by a profound sense of isolation and internal conflict, the heavy toll of a man who fought his entire life to reclaim a sense of self that had been compromised decades earlier. He had, in his own way, broken free from the cage, but the scars he carried ultimately shaped the narrative of his later solitary years. Hedy Lamarr, The Beauty and the Forgotten Blueprint. The most tragic irony often lies in the subjects who were too intelligent, their creativity weaponized by the same authorities that controlled their image. To the world, Hedy Lamarr was merely the most beautiful woman in the world, a glamorous Austrian screen goddess known for films like Samson and Delilah. What the public, and indeed most of Hollywood, did not know was that she was also a brilliant inventor. She co-developed a sophisticated frequency hopping system in 1942, designed to prevent the jamming of Allied torpedo guidance systems, a technology that forms the foundation for modern Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and GPS. Her genius, which should have been her triumph, was instead weaponized against her. She was allegedly pressured by high-ranking military liaisons and studio heads to focus only on her beauty, reinforcing the narrative of the glamorous but empty-headed star. These officials, blinded by her celebrity, saw her intellect as a distraction to her primary function as a national morale booster. The psychological toll of this intellectual suppression was severe. She was deeply frustrated that her true contribution was ignored, while she was forced to participate in endless publicity stunts that focused solely on her physical appearance, such as selling war bonds by offering a kiss. The shame of being reduced to a beautiful object while holding a billion-dollar invention in her mind was a constant internal suffering. She was paraded as a living prop, The irony of her war effort being ignored in favor of her physical appearance was profoundly humiliating. The patent for her technology expired before its true value was recognized, meaning Lamar never received financial compensation for an invention that would later be worth billions of dollars. Her intellectual property, in effect, became the property of the state, used for its purposes, while she was dismissed and controlled by the very image she was forced to maintain. She spent her later years as a recluse, disillusioned, and struggling financially. The woman dismissed as a pretty face had actually laid the groundwork for the digital age, yet she passed away in 2000, knowing that her greatest achievement had been overlooked for nearly 6 decades. Her life is a poignant example of the cost of genius, suppressed in favor of a controllable aesthetic. Rock Hudson, the ideal gentleman and the image architects. Some secrets required more than just silence. They demanded a completely fabricated life, built layer by layer by unseen hands. Rock Hudson was Hollywood's ideal bachelor, the quintessential leading man, handsome, charming, and a symbol of reliable American masculinity. In reality, he was a gay man, forced to live in absolute secrecy by his agent, Henry Wilson, and the powerful studio system. His identity was not just hidden, it was meticulously replaced. When rumors threatened to expose him in 1955, a sham marriage to Secretary Phyllis Gates was quickly orchestrated. The elaborate, public nature of the wedding and the staged appearances were a necessary measure of control. Some believe the government had a vested interest in protecting Hudson's image. As the face of American masculinity, Hudson was an incredibly valuable cultural anchor during the 1950s and 60s, representing the moral and social stability the government wished to promote. Exposing him would not just ruin his career, it would destabilize a carefully crafted public narrative about the American family. This required a relentless, daily act of deception. His public appearances were tightly scripted, and his private life was monitored to ensure compliance with the straight persona. The emotional emptiness of his massive, lonely mansion was the physical manifestation of the scope of this fabrication. He was forced into the ultimate denial of genuine love and intimacy, turning his fame into a gilded prison built entirely on lies. Hudson lived with the constant fear that any intimate relationship, any misstep, would lead to his professional destruction. The human cost was a life of absolute isolation, forced to live a lie and deny a fundamental part of his nature. The tragedy is that his final act ultimately destroyed the very system of control that had defined his life. When Hudson was diagnosed with AIDS in 1985, his public revelation put a human face on the disease and forced the world to confront the reality of the secret life he had been forced to live. In his final, brave moments, the controlled image shattered, leaving behind the complicated human man who, by his suffering, unexpectedly brought compassion and awareness to millions. Montgomery Clift, the wounded romantic and the trauma conditioning. When the conditioning broke, it was often sudden, violent, and highly visible, forcing the world to look away from the glamour. Montgomery Clift represented a new kind of leading man, sensitive, vulnerable, and deeply introspective. This intense fragility made him an immensely magnetic screen presence, but also a susceptible target for psychological control. Clift was already deeply insecure, a vulnerability that manipulators could exploit to control his decisions and his public behavior. In 1956, Clift was involved in a severe car crash that fractured his jaw and inflicted immense pain. What followed was a lifelong descent into dependence on pain medication and alcohol. The immediate aftermath of the crash saw the medical system, intentionally or unintentionally, fail him by providing the very means of external control that prevented him from healing. Some controversial accounts suggest that this physical trauma and subsequent pain were not merely managed, but actively leveraged as a means of control, a form of trauma conditioning. His reliance on pills became the chain used by his handlers, a system of external control that prevented him from healing both physically and mentally. His constant need for approval and dependence on others, which worsened after the accident, made him easily manipulated by those supplying him with medication and managing his career. Friends noted with increasing alarm his inability to manage his own affairs, watching helplessly as he slipped further into isolation and self-medication, a cycle that felt tragically irreversible. The crash, in this context, was not just an accident. It was the physical manifestation of his internal struggle. The point at which the immense psychological pressure he had endured for years finally broke his body. His self-destructive behavior and erratic career choices were publicly framed as the tragic results of the accident, which conveniently concealed the years of psychological manipulation that preceded it. Cliff's enduring cinematic legacy, however, is a testament to the raw, aching authenticity he brought to his roles. His pain became his art, allowing him to channel his internal confusion into performances that resonated with profound, genuine emotion until his passing at the age of 45 in 1966. Gene Tierney, The Laura Star and the Fan's Confession. What if the trigger for one star's mental breakdown wasn't a tragedy, but a carefully placed piece of information designed to induce psychological stress? Gene Tierney, the exquisite star of Laura and Heaven Can Wait, was the picture of serene, untouchable beauty. Yet behind her graceful exterior lay a devastating secret that eventually shattered her mind. While pregnant in 1943, Tierney contracted rubella after meeting an infected fan who had broken quarantine. As a result, her daughter, Daria, was born with severe disabilities, including deafness and partial blindness. Tierney's mental health deteriorated as she struggled with immense guilt and depression, leading to periods of institutionalization and 27 electroshock treatments. The isolation of the sanitarium became a place where her secrets could be fully contained. Years later, she learned that the fan who caused the infection had approached her, proudly mentioning their meeting. Some historians speculate that the fan, or more precisely, the timing of the fan's admission, was meticulously managed by the same political forces that wished to see her influence neutralized. This theory suggests that her breakdown was exploited to silence her. The electroshock treatments, medically mandated to address her condition, were allegedly used to reset her memory, suppressing specific, sensitive knowledge she may have accumulated during her marriage to designer Oleg Cassini, who had strong political connections. Cassini's own covert activities made Tierney's unstable mental state a major liability, justifying the extreme nature of the reset treatments. The desperate atmosphere of the sanitarium, far from the glamour of Hollywood, served as a perfect cover for this enforced silence. These powerful connections and the secrets they held were allegedly the true target of the memory wipe. The severe treatments destroyed significant portions of her memory, including happy moments with her other daughter, Christina. The individual who had endured these procedures fought relentlessly to recover. She eventually found peace, but only after facing her deepest demons and writing about her painful story in her 1979 autobiography. Her tale inspired Agatha Christie's novel, The Mirror Cracked from Side to Side, turning her profound personal suffering into a fictionalized warning about the terrible vulnerability of a star. Gary Cooper, The Stoic Cowboy and the Forbidden Pregnancy. Even the greatest symbols of American morality were leveraged. Their sins were not covered up, but weaponized. Gary Cooper was the embodiment of American masculinity, tall, stoic, and married to socialite Veronica, Rocky Cooper. When he began a passionate affair with the much younger rising star, Patricia Neal, in 1949, the studio system and high-level associates worked tirelessly to suppress the truth. The situation grew explosive in 1950, when Neal became pregnant with Cooper's child. An illegitimate pregnancy in 1950s Hollywood could have ended Neal's career, but more importantly, it would have shattered Cooper's wholesome, all-American image, an image allegedly leveraged for government Cold War propaganda messages. This public image of moral rectitude was deemed too valuable to compromise. Under immense pressure from Cooper and his circle, Neal made the difficult and painful decision to have an illegal and dangerous abortion. The profound damage to Cooper's internal life stemmed from this forced choice, turning his public persona into a suffocating cage built on guilt. Cooper, a devout Catholic, was immediately tormented by guilt, which was, in this interpretation, ruthlessly exploited by those managing his career. His retreat into rigid Catholicism was a public compliance measure that masked an intense, private moral agony. His wife, Rocky, discovered the affair and allegedly threatened to destroy Neil's career if the relationship continued. Cooper eventually ended the affair and made a public recommitment to his marriage and Catholicism, a move that only served to reinforce his public image of moral rectitude. The guilt became his emotional lever, forcing him to comply with the narrative constructed for him. The cost was immense. Neil suffered a profound psychological deterioration following the abortion, while Cooper carried the secret guilt for the rest of his life. The entire affair, pregnancy, and abortion were never reported at the time, illustrating the complete control the system wielded to protect its most valuable symbols, especially when those symbols were being used for national influence. Merle Oberon, The Exotic Beauty and the Erased File. The most successful subjects were those who were already adept at denying their own truth, making the government's work chillingly simple. When audiences gazed at Merle Oberon's ethereal beauty, they were told she hailed from aristocratic British roots in Tasmania. The reality was that this Oscar-nominated actress was born Estelle Merle O'Brien Thompson in Bombay, India, in 1911, the daughter of a mother of mixed race and a British father. Because of the era's strict limitations, the revelation of her true identity would have instantly ended her career. The studio manufactured an entirely fictitious background, claiming she was from Tasmania, a location chosen, chillingly, because its birth records had been destroyed in a fire, making verification impossible. Oberon spent her entire life maintaining this fiction, even refusing to visit Australia until late in her career when she feared her true background was about to be exposed. The sheer physical and psychological burden of this total identity fabrication was relentless. The immense psychological pressure this required was constant, and some suggest this need for total identity fabrication was subtly reinforced by manipulative agencies seeking controllable assets. The fear of exposure was the ultimate lever, ensuring her complete compliance with the manufactured persona. Every social interaction was a meticulously crafted performance. The physical strain of maintaining the deception, the painful skin treatments, the demanding lighting on set was a constant physical price she paid. As she aged, she underwent painful skincare treatments and demanded specialized lighting on set to conceal her mixed-race complexion, a physical manifestation of her psychological terror. The human cost was absolute isolation. She was unable to share her true identity with even her husbands or her children. She lived in constant fear that someone from her past in India might recognize her and expose the truth, a profound suffering that haunted her polished, glamorous exterior. Errol Flynn, The Swashbuckler and the Double Agent's Log. Some stars willingly played the game, using their charisma and access not just for fame, but for actual espionage. Errol Flynn was the screen's ultimate rogue, the charismatic swashbuckler whose real-life exploits often exceeded his film roles. While his public image was defined by debauchery and adventure, highly controversial accounts suggest Flynn was an active double agent during World War II, allegedly working for both the Allies and, potentially, German intelligence. His famous yacht, Travels, and glamorous, unrestricted access to various international ports were, in this theory, utilized for secret transport and information gathering. His famous yacht, the Zaka, became a floating command post, often sailing into volatile international waters. This glamorous deception was the perfect shield for high-stakes, covert missions. The sheer scale of his recklessness and scandalous behavior was an open secret in Hollywood, but some claim this behavior was quietly overlooked and allowed by powerful figures as a trade-off for his service. His image as an uncontrollable hedonist was the ideal, invaluable cover for his espionage. His immense charisma and magnetic persona made him the perfect agent, a figure so flamboyant that his actual, clandestine activities were easily dismissed as just another layer of his well-known persona. His political writings and associations, often seen as mere eccentricities, were allegedly part of his covert communication. The human cost of this double life was severe. Flynn's constant, desperate pursuit of excitement and his extreme self-destructive tendencies can be interpreted as the psychological toll of living a life devoid of genuine stability and constantly on the edge of profound danger. His recklessness, often viewed as a personal failing, was arguably a professional necessity, a form of public misdirection that protected his true activities. The danger, the risk, and the total lack of authentic connection contributed to his rapid physical and psychological deterioration. His final years were marked by a physical and psychological deterioration that outpaced his age, leaving leaving behind the legend of a man whose real life was more fraught with danger and mystery than any film he ever made. Rita Hayworth, Gilda, The Transformation, and the Hidden Language. The goal was often to weaponize an individual's magnetism by stripping away their true identity until only the manufactured persona remained. Rita Hayworth became the definitive American love goddess, yet she began life as Margarita Carmen Cancino, the daughter of Spanish dancer Eduardo Cancino. Studio executive Harry Cohn oversaw a complete identity transformation. Her naturally dark hair was dyed auburn, her hairline was painfully altered through electrolysis to appear less Latin, and her name was changed. This calculated cultural and identity eradication was designed to make her palatable to mainstream American audiences. The public transformation masked a darker truth, a childhood of trauma, including abuse at the hands of her own father. The creation of Gilda, the sensual, confident femme fatale, was the ultimate manufactured product, stripping away the pain and the Spanish roots of Margarita. The physical pain of the electrolysis was a constant, real-world reminder of the identity theft she had endured, a brutal conditioning process. While audiences were captivated by her screen presence, Hayworth privately struggled with crippling insecurity, famously lamenting, "They go to bed with Gilda and wake up with me." The psychological violence of the transformation led to a complete loss of her natural self, trapping her in a role she could never escape. The cruel irony of her later life provides the most chilling evidence of the system's impact. In her 40s, she began showing symptoms of early-onset Alzheimer's disease. As the disease progressed, stealing her memories, she would sometimes revert to speaking Spanish, the language of her childhood and her true self, as if her original identity was finally, tragically, breaking through the carefully constructed facade that had held it captive for decades. This involuntary return to Margarita Cancino was the final, devastating collapse of the manufactured system that had demanded her compliance. Spencer Tracy, the man of moral strength and the guilt lever. Guilt is a powerful tool. When the studio or the government found a source of genuine, deep-seated pain, they found the ultimate lever. Spencer Tracy, known for his moral strength in films like Boys Town, faced a lifelong private struggle that became his greatest weakness. Married to Louise Treadwell, Tracy was devastated when their son, John, was born deaf. Tracy, a devout Catholic, saw his son's condition as divine punishment for his own perceived sins, fueling his intense feelings of guilt, which led to battles with alcoholism and depression. This profound guilt was allegedly leveraged by the studio system to maintain absolute control over his private life. Because of his Catholic beliefs, he refused to divorce Louise, even when his marriage ended in all but name. He began his 26-year relationship with Katharine Hepburn in 1941, a relationship that remained largely secret and controlled. His public performance of marital devotion was a necessary sacrifice required by the system to maintain the carefully constructed image of the wholesome American male. The Catholic Church's strict stance provided a specific, effective control mechanism used by his handlers to prevent him from upsetting the carefully managed equilibrium. His image as a family man was carefully managed, while Hepburn was publicly dismissed as just a friend. The guilt over his family, coupled with his fear of public scandal, ensured he never challenged the studios. The most remarkable aspect of this situation was Louise Tracy's extraordinary dedication to their son. She founded the John Tracy Clinic in 1942, which became internationally renowned for helping deaf children. The clinic became their shared redemption, transforming their private heartbreak into a powerful public legacy. This public good, supported by Spencer, maintained his necessary image of integrity, protecting him from interference. The private conflict, however, consumed him until the end. If this journey through Hollywood's hidden history has intrigued you, please show your support by hitting the like button on this video and share it with a friend who loves classic Hollywood. Every interaction helps us celebrate the full, complicated humanity of these legendary performers. Clara Bow, the It Girl and the Asylum's Control. For the most vulnerable, the system used the ultimate weapon, the sanitarium, a place where secrets could be suppressed and identities reset. Clara Bow, the effervescent It Girl of the 1920s, rose from devastating poverty to become America's first true sex symbol. Her real life was marked by extreme trauma, including abuse and instability in her childhood. Bow's immense popularity and influence over young women made her a target for control, and her erratic, uninhibited behavior made her a source of constant concern for studio heads and morality watchdogs. watchdogs. Her mental health declined rapidly under the immense pressure of fame and her unresolved childhood trauma, leading to her early retirement at the age of 28. Following a series of public crises, Bo was sent to various institutions. These rest cures and institutionalizations, though framed as necessary medical interventions, were allegedly used as periods of enforced silence, where her secrets could be suppressed and her financial assets could be controlled. The sanitarium became a quiet place, where the damage could be contained, far from the inquisitive eye of the public and the press. The cruelty lay in the removal of her personal autonomy and the seizure of her financial control, all cloaked in the language of treatment. This loss of autonomy left her psychologically trapped, despite her physical freedom years later. Her private struggles were conveniently pathologized and hidden from the public eye. Bao struggled for years with profound anxiety and the effects of post-traumatic stress. The human cost was the complete destruction of her professional career and her withdrawal from the public sphere. The woman whose energy defined the Roaring Twenties had her flame extinguished by the very system that celebrated her, leaving her to live out her final years in quiet, protected isolation, a tragic example of how the vulnerable are silenced. Tony Curtis, the boy who never grew up, and the missing years. Our final story is perhaps the most chilling, involving a star whose career spanned decades, yet whose early life remains obscured by rumor and silence. Tony Curtis, the versatile heartthrob of Some Like It Hot and The Defiant Ones, created an image of buoyant, tireless ambition. Yet his tough upbringing, coupled with his time in the Navy during World War II, is the subject of profound speculation. Some theories suggest that his early military service was not just a period of national duty, but a time of recruitment or even psychological testing. Certain accounts point to alleged amnesia around specific, significant blocks of time during his early 20s and an almost relentless need for constant reinvention throughout his career. This restlessness and constant shifting of identity could be interpreted not as ambition, but as symptomatic of a fragmented or compromised persona. His need for constant reinvention, pivoting wildly from dramatic roles to comedy, can be seen as symptomatic of a fragmented persona, a man whose original self was replaced by marketable components. The constant emotional exhaustion of constantly searching for an authentic core under layers of manufactured ambition became his personal burden. The intensity of his drive, the relentless energy that powered his 6-decade career, was perhaps the result of a mind desperately trying to create coherence from fragmentation. The deep nagging suspicion that the most successful part of him wasn't truly his own haunted his private moments. The government and studio system allegedly produced, in Tony Curtis, the perfect, marketable star, a talent capable of playing any role, perpetually energetic, and entirely focused on his career. The cost was a lifelong feeling of searching for a self he could never quite grasp. Curtis's journey is a sobering reminder that sometimes the most successful and enduring public images are the ones most thoroughly detached from the authentic human being beneath. He channeled this unrelenting drive into a prolific career that spanned 6 decades, a legacy built on the very restlessness that haunted his private life. The Cost of the Golden Mask. These 17 stories, though separated by fame and circumstance, are woven together by the common thread of absolute control. The control of image, of identity, and tragically, of the very mind. From Judy Garland, who was systematically medicated to maintain her fragility, to Merle Oberon, who was forced to erase her very bloodline, these icons were subjected to levels of manipulation that dwarf the celebrity scandals of today. We must reevaluate our understanding of these legendary performers. Their staggering achievements were accomplished not from a place of pampered ease, but often through profound struggle against invisible forces, whether they be the omnipotent studio system or, as some speculate, deeper governmental interests. The resilience they displayed, the ability to still create art and touch millions while carrying these immense, terrifying secrets, makes their work even more remarkable. The psychological impact, the loneliness, the guilt, the self-destructive behavior was the true price of the golden mask they were forced to wear. When we watch their films now, we see not just the performance they gave on screen, but the agonizing one they maintained off-screen as well. The stars of Hollywood's golden age shine no less brightly for having been revealed as complex, flawed, and beautifully, tragically human. Their art was immortal, but the artists themselves were rendered tragically disposable. And that concludes our deep dive into the hidden programming and profound personal cost carried by the Golden Age's brightest stars. Their artistry endures, but knowing the truth behind the curtain allows us to appreciate their complex, painful human journey even more. If this exploration into the shadows of classic cinema resonated with you, please ensure you are subscribed to Golden Age Files so you never miss another story from Hollywood's lost archives. A simple like helps us immensely to keep researching these valuable, forgotten histories. Finally, we want to hear from you. Which one of these powerful stars do you believe struggled the most against the manufactured persona? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, this is Golden Age Files, celebrating the resilience and the beautifully human struggles of the icons who gave us the dream.